friends and brothers. This is Justin Jones with Masonic Improvement. I'm joined today with my co-host, Brother Dennis Yates. What's up, Dennis?
Well, hello. I'm so excited today. We have a good friend and brother. At first, on the Book of Faces on Texas Freemasons, we would actually kind of butt heads on some topics sometimes because he is a lot more calm, cool, and collective, and I'm just like a starburst. It pops into my mind. I put it out there. But we've actually grown pretty close. We talked a lot about these things, and we actually feel so similar. He just has better taste in how he says it. And so, without further ado, the brother that all of you love, Brother Zach Haston, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Anything I can do.
Well, I just want the viewers to know that you are passionate about a lot of things, especially the kids that you take care of. And man, you're at my hero. You really are. I think about that often. I've thought about being a foster parent, and I just don't think I have it in me.
Well,
I don't know if I don't know if I don't have the guts or if I don't have the patience.
It takes a lot of patience, but yeah, it's one of those things that I feel called by God to do it. We do. For any of those who don't know, my wife and I have been fostering for several years. It's not like our defining characteristic, but as kids have left the house and gone off to college and left empty bedrooms, we started filling those bedrooms with kids that needed a place.
Awesome.
Start off with a teenager and her baby, got her through high school, taught her to drive, got her a job, got her, into college and into her own place. And then the rooms were empty again, took in some more kids. We've got 32 is what we're on right now. 32nd, usually 2 or 3 at a time.
That is
over the
noble.
course of several years.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
But I mean, you really see a difference in these kids. Sometimes I'm just housing them for a short time until we can find them an adoptive home. Sometimes I have them for years. So it all, you get all, we take any age, any race, any sex. So we get a big variety of kids coming through. And, it might just be teaching them how to walk. It might be teaching them how to drive. You never know.
And it might just be you being there to love them. That's pretty
awesome. All of those kids, whether they've been abandoned or whatever the case may be, they've all got trauma. You're helping them through that, and it's fulfilling in its own way.
Nice. Go ahead, Justin. I know you want to.
I know I have a real soft spot for especially younger kids. They depend on their parents, and if the parents aren't there, they have nothing. And so I have like a real soft spot anytime I hear like any kids are neglected or just not taken care of. And so I mean, really, that's very noble to do that. I don't know if I would. Me and my wife had talked about that at some point, but it would break my heart probably hearing some of the stories with some of those kids. And so I don't know.
It would.
I don't know.
It absolutely would
handle that, but hats off to you, man. That it takes a special, and I mean this sincerely, it takes a very special kind of person to be able to do that. And I have a lot of respect for you for that.
Now, I take care of the kids. I don't take care of the parents.
Yeah.
We would not mesh well.
I guess that's the thing,
right?
Yeah.
Well, one of these days, I want to get you back on and let's talk about fostering, because I think it's a very cool idea for brothers to hear it from a brother and maybe get some tips on how to get started if they've been thinking about it, because I don't think it's a charity that we would ever not need.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to need it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And honestly, I'll give you 1,000 reasons not to do it. You got to be called by God to do it, and if you're not, you'll quit.
Yes. Yes. So now let's get into the portion that we brought you in for tonight, because I think everybody's going to be chomping on the bits to watch this video. However, I want to first give everyone a little bit of a background about yourself. I really didn't realize that you had a PhD when I met you, and then I saw all the things that you've been a part of, and oh my goodness, someday I plan on running for the Grand South, right, or making myself available. And I look at resumes like yours, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just stupid for even thinking I'm going to do something like that. So tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit masonically and also a little bit professionally, and kind of brag on yourself, because I really want people to know why it's important to listen to what you're saying, because you are educated, and not that other people's opinions aren't important, but you research, and you know how to research, you do your due diligence. So brag a little bit about yourself.
Well, I did a lot of schooling. So I was into schooling for a while. I did a bachelor's at UT Austin uh, in civil engineering, followed by a master's and a PhD in civil and environmental engineering at Stanford. Spent
Man,
several years, found a bacteria actually at a site in Victoria. You probably don't want to hear all this, but
I do want to hear it.
that's
I'm
awesome.
interested.
I found a
Yes.
bacteria naturally occurring in the ground at a site in Victoria, Texas, that was um, taking carcinogens, solvent spills that were carcinogenic, and essentially turning them into plant hormones. So we
Wow.
extracted that bacteria, studied it, wrote a bunch of papers on it, figured out how it worked and how to make it happy so that we can go to sites and clean them up. And in essence, the process is a lot cheaper than a lot of the other processes that people were using. And,
Wow.
That
and
is
you know,
awesome.
I had a nice reactor in my lab, which I put carcinogens in one end and got plant hormones out the other end. So uh, figuring out how to make
That
those
is
bacteria
so
happy.
cool.
That is awesome.
Um,
That is so cool. So
after the
you actually found plant life that reabsorbs the chemicals in from our spills in,
well,
and
I won't get too technical, but it's like respiration, but they use the chemical instead and actually get some energy from it
Hmm.
and grow. Very little, but that's okay. We can work with that. And
wow, that's cool.
uh, after the PhD, I came back to Texas as fast as I could. I literally defended my dissertation on Texas Independence Day, uh,
Nice.
and then and headed right back
Very cool.
after. uh, because
Very
I was
cool.
born and raised in Texas, and went out there for PhD and got back as fast as I could.
Hmm.
Since here, I've been working as a consultant, doing a lot of monitoring, doing some cleanup, that kind of stuff. It's all environmental work. A lot of studies, a lot of time in front of the computer, in front of Excel, as you probably figured out.
Yes. Yes, a lot of data.
A lot of
Well,
data.
and that's why you're so good at what you do for our fraternity, because you really can just find those nuggets that we need to know to be able to figure out where we're going to go from here.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't think there's enough. We don't look at data enough in our fraternity, I feel. So this it's really refreshing to have brothers like yourself that can actually say, like, here in an unbiased way, here's the data and this is the interpretation of it. But yeah, it is what it is, without really giving like a argument one way or the other necessarily. Just here's the data. This is how you can
Well,
interpret it.
and that's ultimately why I do it, because we all have feelings. We think this or we think that, but if you go back and look at all the data, it can reaffirm that feeling. It can put a number to it. It quantify it, justify it, or refute it. Sometimes I guess things and I do up a chart and I go, oh well, that's not true. And sometimes I share those. You know,
Sounds
but
like the
anything I
scientific method to me.
yeah, guess and check. It's a lot of guess and check.
Yeah, cool. I love that. So why did you join Freemasonry?
Um, um, I was a late joiner, so I didn't join till my 40s, and I I had no family. My parents weren't in masonry at all. My wife was a rainbow girl, and my father-in-law was past master of our lodge. So After we got married and I moved back to Texas and I'm around them, I kind of thought about it just because of the experience with them. Um, but my initial quick study, uh, I found that the Catholics and the Baptists didn't like it, and I figured anything the Catholics and the Baptists agree on. Yeah. So I kind of stayed away
Nice.
for a few more years, just because I didn't know.
Mhm.
But my wife put my kids into Rainbow Girls, and they were in Rainbow Girls for a while, and everything that I heard about masonry that was bad was totally refuted by what was right in front of my face, which is my father-in-law. And I mean, he's as good and upstanding as you can get. I mean, there's no way that he's a devil worshiper. That's not even possible.
Right.
Uh, so with that sitting in front of me, and then once my daughter got elected into a higher position in Rainbow Girls, I was like, I got to check this out. And boy, I tell you, since first time I knocked on that door, I've been all in, 100% ever since.
Very nice. Now, what lodge do you belong to?
Arlington, 438.
Arlington 438.
Yep.
And how did the, since you said you've been all in, but how did your experience fare to what you were expecting when before you got in? I mean, I know you had your expectations. You knew about your father-in-law, but I'm sure you had some expectations on your own, or thoughts or what have you.
Well, as soon as I came in, I was bitten by the mystery, and there was so much cool stuff in the EA degree, and we have great teachers at Arlington. It's a great group of guys. So I mean, I'm all in for the fellowship. I'm all in for the cool stuff. Even to this day, anytime I can hear a talk and I get cool stuff, I love it. That has not changed. Um, whether it's EA degree, master's degree, or all kinds of other stuff. Um, I thirst for that and go to everything I can, which I wish was more, honestly.
Very nice. So,
So
so I'm assuming that with all that activity and all the value that you find in your lodge, that it's been a very positive experience, um,
oh yes,
because they're doing masonry right. They've got their finances right. They've got their values right. They've got their ritual right. I figure that's probably why you're still so passionate about it today. Am I correct?
I believe so. Absolutely, we work hard on the ritual. We do, I think, very good degrees.
Very
We've
nice.
got very good teachers to get them to Master Mason, and I keep pushing for more past that, and we do more. If anything, one of my faults is that I do a really cool presentation of everything I think is neat in the master's degree, and then for like 5 years, I figure, well, I just told them that. But I didn't tell a new group
That's funny. That's
that.
funny. Thank God I don't feel that way. I wouldn't have anything else to do. um, so being that your lodge is successful, why don't you share some of your thoughts on how lodges out there can be successful? We're in that time of year that we've got new masters coming to the floor. We have officers that are all in, ready, excited about their new jobs. Um, what are some things that can help them to be viable in the future, or even in the present, to have the type of experience that they're all hoping to have?
That's a big question with a lot of answers.
Yeah.
So by the time they're master, hopefully they've been around a while and know everything that lodge does, and what the lodge members want to do, right? Because ultimately, if you've got a bunch of members wanting more education, you should be providing more education. If you've got a bunch of members that are all into this really cool thing you do for the first responders, you need to be continuing to do that thing for the first responders. And if there's some, you know, hopefully you're in contact with all your members, and if there's something more that they want, you've got plans to give it. Every new master comes in knowing what's been done before, but they all have something that they want to do, right? Absolutely do it. You know, hopefully it'll stick. If it doesn't, it'll fade away. But if it sticks, it might stick around forever.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got a large group of people that you got to feed, right? You're the shepherd. You got to give those guys who like to do the charity work. You got to give them, you know, and make that come off well. You know, that event come off well. And you got these other guys who are into the ritual and love the degrees, and you know, you've got a lot of degrees to do, and you got to make sure that all goes off well. And there's a lot of organization that goes on that. Seeing who's going to be there what night is just one part of it. Another large part is that we need to pass on the ritual, right? We need to get these new guys in and have them learn the charge. Have them, you know, the very first thing we do is the coin presentation, you know, and have them learn something else or some part for the degree. Get them involved. You know, one thing that will not work is if you bring in new master masons and you don't give them any full education, you don't use them in any degrees because you've got ringers that already do it, right? If they just sit there on the sidelines, they're not lasting for very long.
Right.
Or they might go to another appendant body or something to get more light, which is not all bad. You know, I
Right.
mean, the appendant bodies exist. The York Rite has phenomenally great degrees. And, you know, for those who have been through the masters, the Blue Lodge degrees and are searching for more, highly recommend it. You'll find great stuff there. You know, the commandery, Christian knighthood is absolutely something every Christian Mason should do. And on the other side, the Scottish Rite, that's where you pop up the book and you go down that rabbit hole. And there's a lot of great stuff there. It takes a little more time to chew on it, but you get a lot of good stuff out of it. So I when, you know, I don't push appendant bodies on any of the guys, but at some point they start to ask because they want more of this cool stuff. We'll get you over there. We'll get you going.
Nice.
In addition to the plans for this year, you've got to plan long term for the future, right? For your lodge. That means finances. That means membership. You know, it. One of the things that I like about data is that it shows you where your biggest problems are. If your biggest problems are raising guys to master masons, you can focus on that. Your biggest problem is keeping them after they're a master mason, you can focus more on that. If, you know, you can go through, there's a lot of different parameters, and I share a lot of them on Facebook, whatever comes to mind, but it's all good information that helps you identify where you need to work.
I love it.
Yeah, very interesting. What do you mean when you say, we were talking about planning for the future, like, and you mentioned finances? I'm curious how that looks. Like, how should a lodge be preparing for the future financially?
Well, at a minimum, you should have a balanced budget. I mean, it'd be darn nice if you were growing and putting money away. You know, my lodge just had to buy 2 huge air conditioners last year for $34,000.
Mhm.
You know, we have some investments that we grow and then we use up for that kind of thing, but you've got to factor in those long-term things. And so, you know, this year's got to be balanced, but you got to be socking away some for the big expenses that do come on these older buildings.
Yeah.
Our building's over 50 years old. So pipes bust, air conditioners go out eventually. You know, those kinds of things happen. So you got to maintain for your building. But in addition to that, I'm the treasurer of our lodge now. And when you're planning for the future, that means predicting membership, number of dues payers, amount of income, all these kinds of things. You got to set things up so that we pass this thing off, and it perpetuates forever. One thing that is completely unacceptable to me is to use the money that my grandparents put into that investment account and use it up to zero, and then just let the lodge die or consolidate into something else. That's not cool. I'm using grandpa's nest egg is not something we're going to be doing. So
it's nice to hear that somebody else feels the same way we do. I mean, that's and this was not preempted, guys. This is Zach just speaking from the heart, and so, man, I'm so glad to hear that, because we've been trying to tell people a lot of these things, and it's refreshing. It's refreshing and necessary. And guys do need to think about it right now, because if we don't start doing it now, when are we going to start?
Right. What would that look like? Say I'm a lodge, doesn't matter the size or anything like that, and maybe we haven't been planning forward financially. And say we come together and we all agree we need to actually start preparing. This building's going to need to be replaced one day. Maintenance is starting to add up. What do we need to do? What do we need to look at? What decisions do we need to make today so that 5, 10, 20 years down the road, when things come up, we are better prepared?
Well, I mean, that's going to vary a lot between lodges,
and
lodge finances vary a lot. We've got some lodges that have virtually zero overhead, right? They get free housing, free electricity, free everything, and their dues can be super low, and they're going to perpetuate forever on super low. We've got other lodges that have $1 million investment accounts. And, they're going to be just fine on that, or, they got oil wells pumping out and giving them money. There are lodges out there that don't need to worry about dues. My lodge isn't one of them. We have some investments, but we definitely have to have dues to go along with that. So the first thing you got to do is quit just hoping it is all fine and actually look at the numbers and get a budget. I believe that we added budget to the Vanguard, but it's not really a required thing. We suggested a lot and recommended it at officer leadership training. We tell everyone they should do it, but there is no hard requirement. And I think a lot of lodges just continue on and, hope everything's fine. It'll be fine this year. And then when those air conditioners goes out, you got problems. You got to plan for these things and set things up. Do your budget, figure out what your real income is from whatever sources you got. And then with that much money, look at your expenses. And on expenses include capital expenditures for your building. If a lot of lodges rent, obviously, or share a building with other people, each lodge is going to have different finances, but each lodge needs to look at their finances and make it work, because I can tell you statewide, we don't bring in enough money from dues. Well, my opinion, in general, dues is too low. It's too cheap. I mean, if you're spending $200 a year on something that you are doing literally every month, usually multiple times a month, I mean, I don't know of any other hobby that spends that. I spend that much on ammo when I go to the gun range. I mean,
right. Yes. I tend to agree, and I think that we've waited way too long to address this issue, and now people are losing their lodges because they haven't been doing this. And if they would just take a minute, take a breath, say, "Hey, here we are. Now, what are we going to do to get through this?" And then I really liked what you talked about earlier about finding the culture of the lodge. Or that was your number one right off the bat. Finding you didn't say it in those words, but that's exactly what you said. And if you don't have the money coming in, how are you going to support those things? That's the I hate to think about, just like you said, I don't want anyone to well, I'm saying it in different words. I don't want anybody to pay for my hobby, right?
Right.
It's not fair to the public to pay for my hobby. And so, if we don't, even if we um have the big bank accounts that our forefathers left us, um if we're just using that, but as budgeting that in as our income and not letting it perpetuate, then and grow, then we're basically asking them to pay for our hobby.
Yeah.
So we're having somebody else pay our way either way, and we just have to stop doing that. We have to get to a place, and you have the numbers to back these things up that you're saying. You've shown us a lot on Texas Freemasons, but you work for Grand Lodge in one of the committees, and you have to pull the numbers and you see where we really are in Freemasonry.
Yeah, I'm actually on the home and school, so all the charts and everything I do are just because I have access. It kind of actually started out last year, and I was very cautious about what I posted because I kind of feared that every time I posted any graph, I was going to lose my access.
But now they're asking you for more, right?
I was
Now they're
worried about
saying,
it.
"Hey, he can do it. Let's ask him for those graphs."
I've gotten a lot more support since then.
What was that old documentary, An Inconvenient Truth? They're like, whoa, 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 we don't want to see that kind of thing. What are you talking about? Al Gore, that's who it was. Al Gore's documentary.
Al Gore's, yeah, the hockey stick. Don't get me started on that one.
Yes, right,
Well,
right.
well, let me ask you this: since you looked at so much data, you ran so many numbers. What is the most compelling thing that you've come across? What is the most interesting thing to you that you've discovered as you've done your research?
Oh wow. There are a number of things that have surprised me. Um, like one of the first things that surprised me was that it did not matter what age you were on your efficiency at getting to Master Mason from EA. So, in fact, here,
There
let me
we
see if
go.
I,
There we go. Pull
let me
them
see
up.
if I can, let me see if I can pull up something here. So, can y'all see that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So, whether you're 18 to 20, 20 to 22, really all the way across, this is a flat line. So when you take statewide averages, our EA to Master Mason success rate doesn't drop for the guys in the 20s.
Yeah, they're not as lazy as people make it seem, right?
I mean, they're not. I mean, they get a lot out of it, and they have the same curiosity. They like the mysteries and learning all this stuff just the same as anyone in their 40s and 50s and 60s and on. Now,
Interesting.
it is important to note, if I pull up something else here. So if you do look at the retention, so this is 10 to 15 year retention. Our 18 to 20-year-olds, a lot of which are DMLA, have pretty good retention. But then when we get into the early 20s or through the 20s, the retention is a little bit lower. So this is after they become Master Masons.
And this is a 6-year range, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is for those raised 2008 to 2014. So we got 10 years, 10 years plus, and what's their retention? But even though there's a dip for the guys in their 20s, it's still over 50%. It's not like nobody is sticking around in their 20s. And it's not like it's not worth it to go raise anybody in their 20s because they're going to fall away. Well, you know what? We are losing more in our 20s, and we need to think about that and focus on these guys. But I mean, data like this, it makes me think, and it makes me focus on something. I say, all right, why are we losing guys in there? Part of it's our fault, probably in some way. Part of it's not our fault because of other things going on in their lives. But what can we do to retain these guys in their 20s?
So
I do like this bump right here at the 18-year-olds, the ones coming right out and joining are sticking around much better than the ones after a couple years.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's
right.
showing that chart. That's showing people that are just still current on their dues. It's not necessarily showing active or anything like that, like in their lodge or anything. It's just saying that they joined, and over these 6 years they have maintained their dues.
Well, how
Yeah,
are they going
that's
to
10
be?
years plus.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to look at the difference in that, well, you can just start pulling up all kinds of charts here. So let's look at.
Well, I was going to say that, really it's it seemed like it was like the 45 to 50-year-olds that were dropping off the most, that weren't sticking around. People
All right,
my age.
so I'm going to show you another chart here. This is the current status of members by the year raised. So, and this whole area here is suspended really for non-payment of dues. Here's demitted in here. So suspended and demitted. And this is current Master Masons and this is deceased. But if you notice through here, this is pretty flat. That
Right.
portion right there. So that's about 66%. So about 1/3 of our members don't stick around. They go suspended or demit. Now, this slope of this area here is the current Master Masons, but this is all because of death right here. This is deceased. And if you just look at suspended, that's pretty flat. Now, what I also have is of dues payers. And you'll notice of dues payers, you get up to where this low point right here, and actually I'll show that on another chart. All right, can you see that chart?
Yes, sir.
There we go. There we go.
All right, so this is what I was saying after National Treasure, which came out about here. We start to get a little bit of a dip in our retention for a few years. It looks like we're increasing back from that. There's not enough data to see if this is going to continue increasing up and to be something continuing to improve, or if it's going to come back to the long-term average of retention.
I wonder why there was a dip at that
Because
point.
we didn't get to run through the churches looking for a treasure.
Yeah.
They joined looking for Templar treasure.
They didn't find the pot of gold that they
Yeah.
were looking
Right.
I was hoping they met Nicolas Cage and he wouldn't hear.
Yeah.
Right.
The gold's there, but it's not the gold that they were looking.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice. That is interesting that there's a dip because, well, is it relative to how many masters were
This
were
is
made,
percentage
though?
based. It's percentage based.
Okay.
So this is percent of the Master Masons raised in that year,
Yep.
and how many of them are still around, and of just the dues payers.
Okay. Wow.
So I've started doing a lot of charts on percentage basis because of the decreasing numbers of Master Masons. So I look at the number of, so like picking year like 1990. This is the percentage of those raised in 1990 who are still around at the 7-year mark, still around at the 10-year mark, still around at the 13-year mark. And so the reason that these don't extend is because for 2010, we don't have a, well, I would by now. This chart I did a little while ago. I could probably extend this just a little bit, but that's only 13 years ago, so I can only do my 13-year retention that far.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This didn't include this year's MPD data.
I wonder if some of the people during that period that we talk about the National Treasure period, I wonder if they came back today, if maybe they might stick around a little bit longer, because maybe it might have been for the fact that we presented the best of Freemasonry, right? When all of our forefathers that founded this country were Masons, and all the things that the nice dinners, the nice the festive boards, the stuff like that. Though it didn't show festive boards, but it just kind of gave that mystique to the fraternity that we may not have really had during that period, that now we're starting to try to get back to some of that kind of an atmosphere in some of our lodges. So maybe they might be a little bit more interested in sticking around if they were to come back. I wonder.
It's all just theory, you know. I hypothesized that they were looking for one thing and didn't find it, and that's why we had a little dip right there. But I do
Exactly.
like the fact that our chart is increasing since then, right? Since
Yes.
2006, each year our retention is improving. That's
Yes.
a good thing, and it's
Yeah.
not
That
what a
is.
lot of people think, because our number of petitions continues to decrease. So it's only
Ah,
our retention is increasing on a percentage of those raised sticking around, but not on raw numbers, because we have fewer people being raised now than we did.
mm,
And that's why I do a lot of things on percentages when I compare years like that.
Hmm.
right. That makes sense.
So what do you believe the most important takeaway from everything you found so far would be? If I'm a lodge, right,
Mhm.
collectively, and all this data was presented to me, and I guess I'm asking from like the perspective. I like charts and data, but I guess I'm asking from the perspective of someone that looks at that and says, like, what does that really tell me? What do I really need to know? How should I interpret that?
Well, each chart is really answering a specific question that I had.
Mhm.
For instance, degree fees, right? So you've seen in Texas Freemason, I've printed number of degrees done by, charted against degree fees, and I saw no change, um, or any hindrance in raising your degree fees up to $300. So our lodge raised our degree fees up to $300 per degree, so $900 total. And last year we had the second most degrees in the state done.
Hmm.
It did. We're still cranking out degrees just as much as ever, and raising it to $300. I think that they were 300, 150, 100 beforehand. Um, and the theory being that the 100, those guys had to pay dues anyway. But well, let me tell you, $300 for a degree, you've got 15 guys doing a master's degree. They're there for a few hours. That's 15. That's 45. That's 6 2/3. $6.70 an hour per person. So that's less than minimum wage,
Mhm.
Right.
for the number of
Yes.
people that are there for you to do that degree. Not only that, by the time you've gone through everything from EA to fellowcraft, there's no way you're not getting that master's degree.
You're right.
Right? So why do we make it so cheap sometimes?
Yeah.
You know, there are other lodges that are doing degrees for $30 a degree, and I don't get it. We spend a lot more time on that. The EA, we're teaching guys for 6 months, give or
Yeah.
take, some faster, some longer. Um, and you got to factor that into your degree fees. So, I do a chart. I see that, I had some questions on numbers above 300, 500. It seemed, they're doing less, but is it because of other reasons? I saw $1,000 a degree. They're doing less, but is it because of other reasons? Or is it because of that? I don't know. But it seemed fine up to 300.
Hmm.
So we raised ours up to 300. Uh,
Interesting.
other charts, here, let me,
I was going to ask why you pulling that up. Why 300 seems like the magic number, but you answered that question.
yeah, you know, it's not really a magic number, but it's what the data,
but
said that,
you
okay,
but you
300 was fine.
also but you also make sure in your lodge that there's a great degree experience as well, don't
Yes.
you? And
Yeah.
and
I mean, that's
let me
that
ask you this.
very important.
Yes, is it your lodge putting on the degrees themselves, or do y'all have to call people in to help?
No, we fill all the stations ourselves.
I felt like that was kind of a silly question, but
Yeah.
that's
Well,
I just had to
not,
put that out there for the viewers that
not everybody's familiar with his lodge.
with that
right?
being
So
said,
that's a good question.
if a lodge wants to call in someone else to do a lecture or something, that's, if they need that, fine. There are plenty of people that can do great lectures, and we want those candidates to get a good degree. So
Yes.
if you're part of a smaller lodge and you need help, just ask for help. There's lots of guys that are like me, into the ritual. I
Well,
love to get
the brothers of Goliad are traveling an hour away to give a degree, a master's degree for someone. I'm not going to say where, but uh, they're gonna do a master's degree, a full on degree team, heading over to do a degree for someone, a lodge, because they just can't do it, and they know that we do a great degree, and wanted the new master to have that experience, and I say kudos to them for being humble enough to ask. That's it, because that means they care more about the candidate than themselves.
I mean, absolutely. I think all the degrees should be top notch, and there's plenty of people. I mean, I guess I live up in Tarrant County where there's lots of brothers here, lots of people who can help out, and we help each other out and are glad to do it. Very glad
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
it. And you're right. It's all about the candidate. You do not want anyone reading a charge ever.
Right, and I've seen it, and that and it's not the same experience. It's
It's
not.
not the same experience.
And the committee on work was brought in to try to help everyone in Texas have the same experience in being raised, and it's already not happening, because there's lodges that are, you know, serious about their ritual. They're serious about their culture. They're serious about their value that their brothers are getting, and there's some have just given up, and that's a sad thing. It's some is just given up.
Well, if any lodge needs help, just ask. You'll have
Yes.
people jumping.
Yep.
Yes.
People, any chance to visit another lodge, and especially if I can play a part in a role in a degree, I love doing it. Not I'm one of a huge number that
So
love the ritual and the degrees.
let me ask this: since you brought up degree fees, we talked a little bit about dues. I just want to recap, I guess, formally for anyone that's listening. So you said from your research, it's not necessarily the right answer for every lodge, but from your research, $300 for degree fees, separate, not a one time for all, but 300 each
Right.
seems to be what works best for your lodge at this point. Based off your research,
And the magic number all over, really,
yeah, for the
through
most
the
I mean,
part.
research.
Your mileage may vary, but from
For
what you pulled
average,
up,
yeah,
yeah.
for average, yeah. For the average, yeah.
I mean, any lodge doing it for less than $100 a degree, I don't even understand. Honestly.
I like $30. It's like you can do buy one get one free. You can do all kinds of run all kind of specials.
Well,
Oh my goodness.
if you say it's cheap, it becomes cheap.
Yep.
Yes.
And things that are cheap are easily discarded. They're easily
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the other reason that we did it partially is that if you've got $300 into it, that's going to make you probably more likely to study and move on
Mhm.
than less likely. If
Yeah.
you got $30 into it, who cares?
Yeah. It's easy to
Yes.
just blow it off. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we talked about the degree fees. As far as planning for dues, we've always kind of give like a formula. Kind of want to know your thoughts on it if you think there's maybe a different approach. And I know every lodge is different, right? Like you said, some lodges have those trust funds, some lodges have almost zero expenses. I don't think that's the norm, but there's always exceptions. But we've always said more or less if you want to find out what your dues need to be at a minimum, look at how many dues paying members you have. Look at the operating cost of your lodge on average, and divide that. Divide your operating costs by your dues paying members, and that should tell you on average what every brother should be paying. And that will cover your costs, not necessarily set you up for a growing account or anything like that. But curious on your thoughts on that.
It leaves out other income besides dues. Um, a lot of lodges have rentals of some type,
Mhm.
dependent bodies staying at their place, or a cell phone tower out back, or whatever. So you got to include that, and you also got to include the endowment returns and what you're paying for per capita.
Mhm.
Factor all those things in. But yes, when you take all your income added together for the coming year, take all your expenses and divide by the number of actual dues payers, not members of the lodge, because so many people bought $500 endowments way back when, which is another passion of mine you've probably seen on Facebook.
Well,
I've
that's what
been
I was going to ask about next. I'm glad you're passionate about
Don't bury the brother. Don't bury the brother. We want to keep him around.
uh, we have we pushed endowments a lot, and we pushed endowments a lot before we were even allowed to increase them above $500.
Okay.
And
Well,
the average person coming in, if you say he's 40, 45 years old, and the average Texas Mason is deceased at 86, that's 40 years of dues.
yeah. Well, let's go into that. You brought it up, and I wanted to get
Well,
there
yeah,
anyway,
and
because
you've got the data to back that up. So
yeah,
just to touch on it, not to
yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse or anything, but I figure since we talked about the degree fees, we talked about dues. What about endowments? How do we decide what is best for our lodge as far as endowments goes?
Well, here we go.
I'd like to say while he's looking for the next chart that the really the income um expense variable, it should be part of, which is deciding on your dues and all that. That should be part of the budgeting process. You can't create your budget if you don't know the money you're getting in, and that's going to differ from year to year.
Mhm.
And you have to have some kind of an idea based on that. I mean, there's going to be some average um, component to it, but really, to be um, to be a good steward, you need to look at it yearly. When you do your budget, you should be looking at this to make sure that you're still on track with whatever your average is over the years. Go ahead, take it from here, Zach. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, absolutely. You got to factor in many things. This chart here goes towards what your um, endowment should be priced at. We've sold the majority of endowments sold even to this date are still at $500. $500, I think everyone knows, does not even pay per capita right now. It eventually, after they're deceased by enough years,
Is that
will break even, but we're talking decades. But we'll get to that in a minute. What this chart is dues payers only, because we're talking about MPD suspension, so being suspended for non-payment of dues. And this is looking at uh, the year 2000 to date. The average is 16 years that a person pays dues until they quit. So we're not counting the endowed people here. We're talking about the annual dues payers. You bring in a person today, on average, statewide average, he's going to pay 16 years of dues before he drops out. Now, obviously, you've got some guys on this chart, all the way down into the 40 plus years. And you do have a lot of guys lost in the 3, 4, 5, 6 year range. But just because you have some guys lost in the 3, 4, 5 year range does not mean that you need to price your endowments at that, because the overall average is 16 years. And that's what your lodge needs to think about is not what the quickest someone could drop out if they're not interested, but what, for your lodge finances, what can you expect? So,
So you
if you
can
price you
expect 16 years. So you should be thinking about 16 years worth of dues to make your endowments cost at least that. Is that what you're saying?
right, if you're going to get 16 years of dues out of this person, well, if I'm my lodge, I can take that 16 years right now and give you an endowment, right? I'll take 16 years of dues, and what that person has done essentially is lock in today's rate for eternity, right? So even if we increase dues in the future, well, he's already endowed. But and some people say 20 years is a good number because your endowments yield 5% by Grand Lodge law, which is 1/20th. So if you do 20 times your dues for an endowment cost, you'll get back your dues each year for that person. I understand that. This number is a little bit less than 20 years. It's 16 times dues for an endowment. I'm good with that too.
Hmm.
But even the ones that have increased dues, increased their endowment cost, most of them have only gone to 10 years.
Right.
And 10 years takes decades after they pass away just to break even with what you would have gotten out of them financially otherwise.
If they were paying dues. Yes.
Right.
That's
And these are actual dues payers. This isn't like endowed guys that disappeared forever. This is actual payments of years of dues.
And that's an argument I've heard in the past is the endowments don't have to be high because they continue to pay out long after the brother's passed away. However, if that endowment has actually been costing the lodge for a long time and he passes away, it's going to take a really, really, really long time for those returns to even offset the losses. And that's assuming that the lodge can survive that because it creates like this financial void.
Yeah, we're talking 30 years, 40 years sometimes to break even.
Mm-hmm.
If I make any decision for my lodge that takes 40 years to break even, you need to fire me today.
That's just yes, and that's just to break even. That's not
just to
even
break even.
That's not even to put money in the kitty for the future.
And that doesn't even count inflation. 40 years ago, we started these endowments. One of the problems we have is that those $500 endowments are not worth very much anymore, right? You've got to factor in inflation. So
I think it's also important to point out, like, this is by no means a criticism of the program itself. It's more, we need to, just like we were talking about dues and just like we're talking about degree fees, it's more about how we need to reflect on our practices at our lodge. Just because we've been doing it the same way for 40 years, I mean, some lodges probably have dues what they were in 1980 still. It's not just because it's how we always did it and it worked doesn't mean it's what's best for us today.
Well, when we established the endowment system, $500 was a good number for that date. That was a good number, and it stayed for a while. People started to gripe about that number through the late 80s, certainly the 90s, and it got changed to where lodges could change it to whatever they wanted eventually because that number of $500 became too low. So the Graham West voted to let each lodge set it for whatever they wanted, which is great. So now each lodge can set it for what they want. I don't think $500 is what they want, but each lodge can do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Understood. This might be asking a lot. Do we have an idea across the board, even if it's just a general idea, how many lodges are actually making sound financial decisions? Like as far as like they're actually growing financially as opposed to shrinking or being stagnant. I'm just curious because I like to be an optimist, right? I think Freemasonry is going through a renaissance, but I also like to be realistic. I like to know, what are we looking at? Who do we need to be talking to? How much more information do we have to get out to really kind of turn the tide on these lodges that are, I don't know how some of these lodges are are viable. I don't know how some of these lodges that I've been to, that I've been a member of in the past, the numbers just work out magically, but I don't know how they're doing it because their bank account's not growing. They have just enough to skip by. And that might work great for a year or two, but your air conditioners are going to go out, right? Your plumbing's going to burst. You're going to have a pipe that's burst. Your electricity is going to have an issue. A tornado might come through and you might have to, hopefully you'll have insurance, right? But you might have to do some other things. Ultimately, eventually, especially because a lot of us are in older buildings, we have to start preparing. We have to plan for 20, 30 years. We have to replace these buildings or at least start making large maintenance expenses to upkeep them. And my concern is a lot of lodges aren't in a position right now and they need to start planning.
That is correct. We have a fairly small, in my opinion, number of lodges that are financially good. Their membership is growing. There are some. There are not nearly as many as you would want, but there are some lodges whose membership is growing that are doing more and more Master Mason degrees per year. That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you have a lot of elderly brothers, and you've got a lot of deaths. I mean, like my lodge had 18 brothers pass away last year. You know, it's hard to deal with that. And so we did not net grow last year because of that, but we are doing more and more degrees per year, and eventually we'll hit a low point and start back up. And so if you look at the lodges that are growing, we might want to take a good look at the lodges that are growing. And then there are also some lodges. Now, some lodges finances are in fine shape, I mentioned earlier, because they're trust fund babies or something. You know, they got a good deal set up outside. But there are also some lodges that don't have those sweetheart deals that are doing just fine as well. But all that being said, there's a lot of lodges that are coasting unto death.
Well, let me
you know,
ask you if you would you, and you can ask us to cut this part out if you want to. Would you feel comfortable sharing a chart on dues, on the average dues in Texas?
fine, I'll share it.
Oh man. It's like he's got a chart for that?
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to share something slightly different, but
Okay, that's fine.
Because this one I don't like, and therefore I'm going to share
Yeah.
it.
Okay, there we go.
All right. So what this is a calculation chart. The lodge annual dues payments. That's current dues times the number of actual dues payers. So that excludes anyone who's not paying dues because they're 50-year members or whatever. So current annual dues increment plus the membership endowment, or 5% of whatever their membership endowment is, minus their per capita. So this excludes their investment income. This excludes rental income, anything else they got. This is looking just at the dues picture.
So this is what they're bringing into the lodge as their income for their base income as a fraternity, right?
Not counting other sources, but this is
Correct.
basic income from dues.
Yes.
So
So if they didn't have any other income and it was just based off of their fraternity, then this is what they were making.
Well, I mean, some of them, I would argue that if you have $1 million investment and you're using the interest and dividends off of that, that's still from this fraternity. But
Well,
this does
yeah,
look at
but
just the
you know what
dues.
I'm saying. Yeah.
So the
Yes.
number on the left axis, that's number of lodges.
Number of lodges.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And so the median here is $4,000 a year of dues income, essentially. Dues plus endowments minus per capita. I don't know of many buildings that can be supported on $4,000 a year. I know ours can't. You know, it ranges up. You know, our lodge happens to be way up here, but there's just not that many through this whole range of 10,000 plus There's a whole bunch of lodges that are just bringing in $4,000 a year on that calculation. So they got to be getting their money from elsewhere, and some of them are. Some of them are getting huge amounts from elsewhere,
Right. I know of
but
two of
some
them right
aren't.
off the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah, but some of them are not. So
And I know of about 1,000 of them right off the top of my head. No, about at least 100 that I've visited that aren't. So yes,
But
yes,
I
and
mean,
yes.
but we're looking at like 170, 175 that are between $1,000 and $2,000 a year.
yes,
And then 120, more like 118 probably, but less than $1,000. And some of these may like be like you said, like they have trust funds, they
I
have
can
something
only
else
think
going
of
for them.
about 30 of them at the top of my head that
There's
are in
not
that position.
120
There are
lodges in that
not,
situation.
out of
No.
right.
750, there's probably about 30 of them.
Yeah. Wow.
So what this chart tells me is that people are not running their lodge on dues for the most part, right? They're either chewing into their investments to keep themselves alive, or they got other sources of income. And that other sources of income varies, but as you say, there's a lot of lodges that are making $4,000 or $5,000 a year, and it's hard to support a building on $4,000 or $5,000 a year.
Yeah.
But just like you said earlier, and I feel the same way. It's not really fair to be living off for those ones that do have the investments coming in that they're using. It's not fair to be living off that and not allowing it to grow at the same time. There's and that's where the term trust fund baby just fits so perfect
Mhm.
because it's like they're using every penny that comes from. That's how they budget. They say, hey, we're getting this much back, or we got this much back this year, we expect to get the same this next year, and so that's what we're going to make our budget on, and just use it all up as if they were teachers.
The thing is,
Well,
you have these lodge buildings, many lodges sit in buildings that were beautiful when they were constructed.
mhm,
Really nice buildings. In many cases, some of the nicest buildings in town. These were built by people, they weren't catfishing, right? They weren't slinging fish to build this. This is people that came together and built these beautiful buildings.
right.
And kind of like what Dennis is saying, so many of us have rode on those coattails. We've watched this lodge go from something that was beautiful and pristine to something that is a shadow of what it was. And we don't want to put the money in to maintain it. We don't want to put the money in to do the things that had to be done. And we're kind of putting ourselves in a situation. And for some people, it's from some lodges, it's too late, but most lodges can still turn this around, I believe. I'm still optimistic for a lot of lodges, but we have to we put off making inconvenient decisions for decades to where now we have to make hard decisions. But we have to do that. We have to actually look at our finances and figure out what we're going to do.
You know, the lodges that have a lot of investments and are using their dividends and interest and not decreasing the principal, they're still going to last forever.
Mhm.
I'm not as worried about those. It's the ones that have given up, and they're just going to survive as long as they can, then consolidate into someone else. And we have nearly half the lodges in the state that I'm worried about.
My
Yeah.
my thought on that is if I am a healthy lodge and there's a lodge in my district that they're making bad financial decisions and their building's falling apart and they're looking at consolidation at some point.
Mhm.
As a healthy lodge, why would I want to bring that mentality that brought the demise of that lodge into my membership?
Well, if you're a healthy working lodge, I don't have a problem. Usually, the brothers that are there are good guys, right? And you'd be glad to have them in with your lodge.
Mhm.
You just need to make sure that the surviving lodge is well run. But just because you consolidate doesn't mean that half the officers change over,
Sure.
right? You're
Right.
not going to keep if their finances, if they went bankrupt,
You're not going to make them
If-
treasurer.
you probably wouldn't make them treasurer, right?
That's true. That's true.
You're surviving for a reason.
I did want to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But consolidation overall can help a lot of things. We have to keep in mind, though, and I think I published this in the last Grand Secretary article I did. 22% of the lodges that consolidated last year, or 22% of the members of lodges that consolidated into someone else, did not pay dues to their new lodge.
Mm,
We lost 22% of those members.
wow.
So Lodge A merges into Lodge B, and all those guys in Lodge A, 22% of them went MPD.
So with all the consolidations we're probably looking at over the next decade or two, that's a really large number of NPDs that we could be facing.
Every time there's a consolidation, we lose members.
I
Wow.
wonder if some of that might be, and of course, again, this is just theory and speculation, but I wonder if maybe some of that might be, well, of course, some of it will be brothers that just didn't like that lodge to begin with and didn't want to consolidate in, but then some might be brothers that maybe were in a nursing home or something and they kept it up because they were loyal to that specific lodge, and then once it happened they just said, well, it's not a matter of loyalty to that lodge anymore, so why do I keep paying?
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of it. And, similar stat, 25% of the past masters of Lodge A that merged into Lodge B did not return, did not pay dues. And they were past masters of that lodge, probably born, raised, served there. They have all the loyalty and affinity to that lodge. I mean, I'm a member of Arlington Lodge, and my heart is there. And if it disappeared, that would be a huge blow.
Hmm.
I'd probably go somewhere else, but I can see a lot of people.
Right.
Just, my home is gone.
Yeah.
And so whenever there's consolidation, we need to make every effort possible to bring in all the guys from that previous lodge.
Yeah.
It's real easy for the surviving lodge to just continue business as usual and just say, hey, thanks for coming over. Glad to have some more people sitting on the sidelines or filling some officer chairs. But you really need to make an effort to get every member and contact every member, not just the ones that come, call them.
Mm-hmm.
Going down a rabbit hole. My lodge, one of the brothers in my lodge does something called calling over coffee every Tuesday. A couple of the brothers do. They call every Mason on our roster.
Wow.
Not all on it each week. It takes them a few months to go through. Right. They call and chat with them, see what's up, see how they're doing, see if they got any hardships or anything. They do the same thing for the widows. Every widow on our list, we contact them. It might only be 4 or 5 months between contacts, but we touch base.
I like that a lot.
I want to.
It's really good.
You get so much information from that, though. I mean, the brothers that are doing that, they find out about, illnesses. They find out about hardships or this, that, or the other. They also call the MPDs. Ask them what they didn't have, and most of the time they make up some lame excuse about their gotta do this, that, or the other. But we still talk with them.
Right. Let them know you're thinking about them. Yes,
absolutely.
Now I've got a quick question for you in regards to the widows.
Mm-hmm.
You said earlier you're part of the Masonic Charities Foundation, which is probably the one board that I would, well, I say the one. I would love to be on that one as well as the Library Museum, but that one.
Quick correction: I'm not on the Texas Masonic Charities. There's two.
Which one were?
I'm on the Home and School.
Home and School. Okay.
Masonic Children and Family Services of Texas.
I love that one.
Rookie mistake, Dennis.
I know. I love that one too.
For some reason, well, actually, I know the reasons, but I won't get into politics. We formed two different charity groups. Texas Masonic Charities matches the lodge scholarships.
Yes.
We do. The Home and School is in charge of widows and orphans, and so
that is good to know. And the reason I ask is because, which is perfect. It's perfect because you're part of the homeschool and you take care of the widows. And I would like to know, did y'all have, when you've probably been doing this for umpteen years, but if you know when you started contacting the widows, how you found them, if it wasn't just by as they came, as it happened, you just kept track. Did y'all have a program to try to find
You mean like
widows?
initially getting their contact information? Is that what you?
Right, when, like, from, because
Because I wondered the same
for
thing.
let's say Lodge X is deciding they want to get in touch with widows. They want to do more for the widows.
Mhm.
Well, how does Lodge X find the widows? And so, is there any data to where you can, that it's been available to pull that up to find, living spouses?
All right. So the answer is we're working on it.
Wonderful,
it,
That'd
wonderful.
be
it,
really
it
good.
is.
Yeah.
It is. I just joined the board a few years ago, and that's been one of my pushes. It is to work on that list. We initially asked the lodges to give us their lists. We got a couple, not as many as we wanted. Uh, so we've changed the procedure. So we asked the DDGMs to try and get us a list, and that didn't get us a whole bunch more either. So what we have started doing now is, and part of the reason that I got the Grandview access that gives me all the numbers for the charts, is we're tracking all deaths of all Master Masons, and we contact, we make contact after a deceased, usually within a month, and see if the widow, if there's a widow, first of all, if there's a widow,
Right.
and if
Yes.
they have any immediate needs, and then let them know about our programs and how we can help them long term or in the future if they need it, those kinds of things. So we are starting to build a good database from here. Coming into here, though, we just have a few thousand that we know about. Now, obviously, there's a lot more than a few thousand widows.
But that's a great start.
Yeah.
So
That's a few thousand more than a year or two
Well,
ago.
that's something many lodges kind of dropped the ball on. We take care of the
We have
members.
failed. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We have failed, and we need to fix that.
So
now the
that's
home and
great.
school, in all honesty, has a big bank account, and we can help out financially. But the lodges, the brothers of the member who passed, are the ones who need to help out emotionally. And they're the ones who need to invite the widows for dinners periodically. They're the ones who need to contact them, see how they're doing, those kinds of things. If a tree falls through their house from the hurricane, that's where we can come in and help out.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
emotional support needs to still come from the local lodges.
But if a tree falls in their yard and crushes their bird feeder, that's where the brothers from the lodge can come in with a couple of chainsaws and make it happen.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yes. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Mhm.
I really, and I'll talk to you about this later because I've really got some thoughts on that, because it's really been something that's bugged me, but it's that old dilemma of, how do you get that snowball rolling? It's when you're on this side of the hill, how do you push it up and over? Because it's, there's just been too many losses over the past few years that I know of, that um I don't know who their wives were. They didn't show up. We have brothers that were in nursing homes and stuff, and they didn't come, and I don't know. They weren't in Graham.
Right.
The age that is passing away, they're really not in Grandview yet. So
Right.
it's really a tough battle right now.
I do think that's part of the advantage of having events where we encourage our wives to come, because I know a lot of guys are like, well, we're a fraternity. I know that, and I'm not saying do away with that, but make it a point to have an event once or twice a year where brothers can bring their wives. That way we know who they are. And if something happens to Dennis, the lodge is familiar with his wife, and at least they already have some kind of relationship to start with. She knows the brothers at the lodge, right? And I know that your family's already really involved, so that's probably not the best example, but we need to start.
Yeah, there's one of 1,000 brothers in Texas that could reach out to my family and probably
Yeah.
would.
But that's the whole point. Like that's I guess it is a great example because your family has been so involved with fraternity that they know who they can reach out to and they're comfortable doing that, as opposed to one guy has a wife. She's never been to any lodge function. She doesn't know any of those guys over there. She's not comfortable talking to them. She doesn't know who they are. But if you start having these events and they're meeting these people, socializing with one another, it creates that familiarity where if God forbid something did happen to somebody, at least when someone from the lodge reaches out, this is not the first time that she's talked to this person.
No, absolutely. And I can tell you, I know every wife of every officer at Arlington Lodge. You know, we just had a July 4th parade and picnic. Wives are on that with us. They're on the float. They're at the picnic afterwards. They're at installations. You know, we have Christmas parties. Their Valentine's Day events. There events throughout the year that the wives are included. You want to include the wives, absolutely. We do so much without them. There is no danger of including them too much.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
They're safe.
that's
Right.
a fact.
We
That's a
we
fact.
spend 3-4 days. Some of us spend 3-4 days a week in masonry without the
Yes.
wives. So when we do
Been
include the
there.
wives, it's not like it's too much to do that. It's
Right.
always
And
a good thing.
they deserve a nice dress and shoes, brothers. They, get them a nice dress and shoes and let them show them off for a night. That's more than or that's not near enough for for what they deserve for all they put up with. That's for sure. I'm right there with you, Zach. And then it's usually diagonal where I'm doing the star of our fraternity throughout Texas at the same time.
Mhm.
So it's even
One of
I
the
have to
things
buy two dresses.
the shrine does very well is include the wives. You know, give them credit there. The wives, at least Maslow Shrine up here, the
Yep.
wives are very involved in lots of stuff because they're not doing anything esoteric, really. So
Right.
they can do that pretty easy. They don't have the ritual and stuff that we do.
That's right. That's true. In fact, I'm finally breaking down and joining the shrine down here.
Oh, are
I've
you?
put it off all these years. I have turned in my petition and gonna do it to it.
I
All
figured
right.
But I'm excited too.
once you join
I'm
the
excited.
grotto, you're starting down that path.
I know. I just had to have another
I'm grotto
close.
too, so I can't give you too much crap, but yeah.
Hey, one thing I love about the shrine, everyone will tell you, it's all about the kids.
Yes.
The Shriners Hospitals, the Dallas Scottish Rite Hospital, are some of the finest charities in the world. They do outstanding work. And in fact, side note, Texas, if you include the hospitals that are in Texas, both the Galveston and Dallas Scottish Rite, we do more charity in Texas than any other state that I know of.
Wow.
Now,
Wow. That's
if you exclude the hospitals, that's not true. We need to up our Blue Lodge game. But but just
right.
IRS line charity, Texas does very well. We do a lot of charity in Texas, and lodges put together and do quite a bit of charity themselves as well. It's not just the hospitals.
Well, it's interesting you say, um, except for the Blue Lodge, if you take those away, it's kind of right there with the idea of riding the coattails of our forefathers again. How much are we contributing to those charities as well? Now I know that there's a lot of brothers that are, but how many brothers are not? Especially the brothers that have joined those organizations are not. So we need to think about that, what we're joining for, who we're joining, what we're joining for, and is it just to feed ourselves or is it to feed others? That's the key.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think people join Masonry to do charity per
Right.
se. Maybe a little, but Masons are charitable and we like doing it. You know, I love being on the board of Masonic Children and Family Services because we do $5 million a year every year in Texas of charity, helping widows, orphans, and other needy children in the state. You know,
Phenomenal.
it is working on the coattails. You know, that money was put into our investment account well before I joined. You know, and I'm just getting the joy of getting to spend the interest off of it.
I agree with
But
you that a lot of people probably don't join to be charitable. However, I think as you grow as an individual, it's natural to reach a point where you want to start lifting up others around you.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I get enormous, from fostering to Masonic Children and Family Services to scholarships, honoring teachers. I love doing all that work. I
Hmm.
get a lot of
Right, right. And my point wasn't necessarily to just take a jab at people in general, but you know, when you join a certain part of the fraternity, don't just think about yourself. Think about what that part of the fraternity is for. And try to it's just like when we find the culture in our lodge, right? We our all the charity that we do in our lodge, all the functions that we do in our lodge should be pointed towards the culture of the lodge so that you're feeding um what you've joined. And
well,
even if your lodge isn't charitable in that sense and your charity is supporting your brothers and whatnot, feed the culture of the lodge.
I think when most people join, they are takers. Like, give me more,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
As you've been around a little while, right? You very much enjoy helping the new guys. You very
Yes.
much enjoy doing the degrees. You very much enjoy teaching them work. You very much enjoy mentoring the new set of officers and getting them to do it just like we did it in my
Well,
year.
and being the best cheerleader that they could have, right?
Absolutely. Because a lot of officers have doubts, right? Usually about the time they hit senior deacon, maybe junior warden. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can run this lodge. It's a full-time job. I mean, honestly, Arlington Lodge, being worshipful master is near full-time job. It's certainly part-time job.
I believe it.
we do a lot, and so you've got to encourage the guys because they're going to do just fine. And you're there for them. You're going to back them up. You're going to tell them, you've got their back. And we didn't put them in those chairs if we didn't think they were going to be good. Every single person that comes through the door, I envision sitting in the east. Now, sometimes it doesn't work out, right? You're taking your best guess early on, honestly, and you're seeing how they grow. But everyone who comes in, and another point, just on that topic, regarding the Westgate, the way that Masonry advertises is people sharing all the great stuff we're doing on Facebook, people telling their coworkers about it and being excited and everything else. Every single person you bring in is the advertiser for this fraternity. Think about who you're bringing in because that
Yes.
person's going to be advertising this. They're going to be,
Good point.
if their rest of their Facebook feed is about all kinds of stuff you would not approve of, you might want to think twice about letting them into the lodge because they're going to make us look bad.
Agreed.
Man, I love it. And I'll be quick, Justin. I apologize. I've done this to you a couple of times. I love it that, and this is the first time I'll apologize. That's
That's
a
the
sign
only
of
time he's
weakness.
ever apologized.
It's the only time I'll ever apologize, only because Zach's on here. But one of the things that that I loved that you said is that you envision them in the East.
Mhm.
If we would do that more often, in talk about guarding the West Gate.
Mhm.
If you look at that person and you think, is he going to be able to be in the East at some point? Do you really think he's got what it takes that we can, support him in getting there and he'll be okay? Or is he not going to be okay? Now, granted, there are good places for good Masons all throughout our fraternity, but we definitely want the highest caliber that we can, if we can, right?
Right.
So that's a
And I
good
know
measure,
lots of great guys that have no desire to sit in the East,
right?
you know. But when I think about a new guy, I'm thinking about putting him in that direction. He probably won't, a certain percentage of them won't, you know.
Right.
Only a third of our new guys become worshipful master. It's another chart I can show
That's
you.
awesome.
Well,
But if you
actually,
don't think about that and you let them through, then you failed your lodge
yeah.
Well,
because
it,
they just might be there and
Well, if
ruin
you
what you
don't
got
consider
going.
it, then sure enough,
Yeah.
they'll end up in the East. And many lodges have a habit of trying to put guys in that direction as fast as they can. And so I also liked that because that's, yeah, I mean, if this, especially when, like I just said, you got a lot of lodges. I know people that have turned in their master's proficiency who were in the East in 2 years. They went straight to a warden and then they were in the East. And you can say, well,
we've
Oh,
got
I've
one.
seen some shorter.
you'll say, yeah, people can grow, they'll develop. Not in 2 years, not enough. If they're not leadership material now, they're not going to be in 2 years.
I mean, even if they're leadership material, you don't know enough about the fraternity in 2 years.
Right.
We've got a guy just installed at one of the lodges in Texas that was raised last April. He went immediately to senior warden and is now sitting in the East.
Oh my goodness.
That's barely over a year ago.
Yeah. And you're right, because
And
Freemasonry is so different than any other. It doesn't matter if you have experience with Lions Club or Rotary or running your own business. We're so different than every other organization.
Oh yeah.
I mean, basic leadership will get you a long way, but we are very unique also, and you have to take that in consideration. You can't just run in there like you would with another organization and try to run it the same way.
well, and as we say this, I also want to say, it's by no means that brother's fault that he's there.
No,
And I know he's going to try to do his best,
Mhm.
and we will try to help in any way we can if that brother reaches out. No matter what, we will help. And I know that all three of us will. But
And I'm sure
to
the
the,
other brothers in his lodge are, you know, probably a
right,
bunch of past masters that have served in that and they don't want to do it again. They got someone else willing to do it and they're going to just help him as much as they can. I get that,
right, right.
but that's not the ideal.
no, it's definitely not.
Yes, that's not that's just like not having a budget, and
Yeah,
that's it's just as bad.
just coasting.
Yeah.
Well, brothers, it's almost 11. Uh, if anyone has any final questions or comments, otherwise we'll just go into like closing thoughts. I'll be respectful of everybody's time. And did you have anything you want to ask or anything?
um i I am interested to hear what Zach has to say, and then you, and then I'll finish it off.
All right. Well, I'm not sure exactly. I guess I do know how I got to be known as the stats guy. It's because I'm publishing it on Facebook. Uh, that's not where my main heart is, but I am an analytical person and I analyze. And when I find something cool, I share it. But that kind of data and that kind of looking at things and telling everyone where they stand compared to others, telling everyone what they need to think of, in my opinion. You need to think about your endowment costs. You need to think about your degree fees. You need to balance your budget. You need, think about the future, look at these membership trends, all those kinds of things is just part of my analytical mind. Um, sharing statewide data instead of just my lodge's data. And, and I think it helps. At the end of the day, I still love doing degrees, and I still love doing the charity work and everything else that I do at my lodge. But we are also a business, right? We have to keep the doors open. We have to think about the money. We have to think about the membership, and take care of our brothers, take care of our lodge, take care of our brothers. That's pretty much it.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah. And if I can answer any question by looking at data, if I find out anything I think is useful, I'll share it. Maybe you guys get something out of it too. I don't know. Some people look at all my charts and laugh at them. That's okay. Maybe it helps somebody.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Like I said, I always enjoy it. I enjoy data. I have a science background also, so I like looking at charts. I'm just analytical like that too, I guess. Did you have anything else, Brother Haston?
No, I don't have anything really.
I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for coming onto the show. And I have always appreciated, I think the first time we actually had a conversation just face to face was last week or maybe the week before. But so we met in person pretty recently, but I've always admired your data and the posts you make and the information you get out there, because it's some people will enjoy watching YouTube videos and some reading blogs and things like that. And there's other people that could just look at it like at a chart, and that tells them everything they need to know right there. There's all types, right? And that's part of education, is you have to be able to reach out to people in a variety of different ways. That's why we do what we do here, but that's also why data is important. That's why it just as many ways as you can reach out to people and show them the information is important to any kind of educational program. And I think as Freemasons, and specifically as Masonic Improvement, we're all about education. We're all about sharing data, sharing information, new ideas with people. So again, I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate all your efforts on Facebook, and definitely appreciate all your efforts you're doing for those foster children. I did also want to add, because we talked quite a bit about finances, and I think this is probably something that's important to point out. And your data may show otherwise. You may have a chart for this somewhere, but we talked about raising dues and things like this. And one of the arguments that always comes up is that people are going to demit, they're going to leave because the dues are so high. If
He's got a chart for that.
Yeah,
I saw it in his
I'm in the
face
middle.
as soon as you said that. Oh my
I'll just
gosh,
say,
I love it.
my experience is
So this
that
is not final thought.
my experience is that if you can actually show the justification, my point is, we had this at a lodge of mine recently where we basically doubled the dues. We went from 100 to 200, and everyone was afraid that everyone was going to demit. We had 2 people demit, and they were not active members. But if you have a chart, I'd love to see that. I know we're kind of
All right, so here we go. Forget final thoughts. We're gonna.
Yes,
I
nice.
showed a similar chart to this last year, with pretty much the same results. So what we're looking at here is there were 51 lodges last year who raised dues, and of varying amounts. Now, 51 out of 747, so we're talking only like 7% of lodges raised dues. But looking at those 51 lodges who did raise dues, some of them for very low amounts, other ones, the most was 100. A couple of lodges raised dues by $100. This is the change in demits, withdrawals, transfers, and MPDs from their 3-year average for each individual lodge. And the average through here is actually a -1. That's one less person lost after raising dues. Now, honestly, that one less person is because of fewer numbers of members than 3 years ago. So let's just call it even. On average, just like last year, the lodges that raised dues, people, there's a lot of gnashing of teeth and everyone goes crazy about raising dues, but they don't actually quit. You get 2 or 3 people that demit or transfer or withdraw from plural.
Mhm.
You get a few, but it's not that many. And you can look at the chart here. That's each dot is a different lodge that raised dues last year.
But if you're making 1 or 2 new masons every year, which every lodge should be doing that minimally, then you kind of wash that, and you don't really have to worry about that. And you're actually coming out a positive rather than a negative, because you're going to get those newer dues with those newer members.
When we were looking at doubling the dues at the lodge in question, and it's going to sound very callous, but there's so much conversation about people demitting. I ran the numbers, and I don't remember them offhand, but I was like, how many people, if we were to double the dues, how many people demitting would actually put us at where we are now, break us even? And it was a pretty substantial number would have to actually demit, far more than what you'd realistically expect. So if you raise your dues where they need to be, whatever that may be for your lodge, if you have one, first of all, my experience is the people that demit aren't necessarily active, but you'd have to have a pretty substantial exodus out of the lodge to really offset the purpose of raising those dues.
That is correct. And you'll see the numbers on here. There's a whole bunch of $25 dues increases. That's all these lodges right through here, if you can see my cursor. And then there's a whole bunch of $50 increases. These are not enormous numbers. We're not talking about raising it by 300 bucks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when you raise it by numbers like have actually been raised, even up to $100, we're not seeing them. Now, that doesn't mean that if you raised it by $500 a year, you might see some change, right? That goes outside this data set. But at 25 or 50 bucks, people, I mean, inflation has gone up that much. I guarantee you my grocery bill is a lot more than 25 bucks than it was last year.
Mm-hmm. I had thought about that. If you look back at the last time your lodge raised dues, if you ran that through the inflation calculator, it'd probably be more than 25, 30 bucks right there.
Yeah.
Just the difference. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, without even pulling up a budget for reasoning to raise dues, you just pull up inflation, and then you got your justification.
Well, the cost of operating's got just as expensive. It's affected by inflation too, so it only makes sense to raise your dues by whatever the inflation is.
I mean, if you guys are like us, insurance on the lodge going through the roof.
Yeah.
Yes.
Grand Lodge is looking to do something about that, or at least try and assist. But I'll let them talk about that.
That's great. That's good.
Yeah, hopefully that'll come about.
But yes, cost of doing business for a lodge goes up with inflation.
Yeah,
it does. And dues increases. I mean, dues at $100, that just doesn't feed it.
That's a bargain.
It's a bargain. Yeah, it's $100 a year.
Awesome. Well, I apologize for my final thoughts getting.
Oh no,
that's
anytime anyone talks, I think of another chart that I've got.
Yes.
But
yes.
I'll abdicate. And
instead of there's an app for that, there's a chart for that.
There's a chart for that.
Chart.
What are your final thoughts, Dennis?
First of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, really have enjoyed this conversation, and not just in the data and chart, portion of it, but just hearing your views on things in general, because I know that they're thought out, and not only thought out, but you've seen firsthand the things that you're talking about. You're talking about things that firsthand are facts, whether it be having a good culture in your lodge, and having your lodge behind it, doing budgets, having financial solvency in your lodge, and even if you have some kind of an investment strategy, not even being a trust fund baby, even if you have some kind of an investment strategy, you still should budget and be good stewards with what you've been given. We're taught all the time that we need to leave the world better than we found it, leave the place better than we found it, and yet we tend to not do that in our lodge. And I wanted to have you on the show to be a good inspiration um, of thought for all these young masters and officers coming into the line right now who are going to need that. They need to know that it's okay to think those things, the things they've been thinking in the background that they've been afraid to talk about. They're not wrong in doing that, and they should know that there's a few past masters out there that are willing to support them, and there might be a little bit of data that will help them along the way as well. Heck, they might pause our videos and look at those data charts and take pictures just to take to their lodge to help their case. That would be wonderful if that were the case, and it helped the lodges positively. And I think that that's what your charts do. And I think that I certainly do not laugh at any of your charts. And I think that the ones who do just simply choose not to want to look at things intelligently. I just got to say it. I just have to say it. And I know you're not that guy, but I am that guy. but there comes a time when we need to celebrate what we have, give what we can, do what we can. And it sounds like you come from a lodge that does that. And hopefully we can promote more lodges doing that as we come into this Renaissance period. We're full of education, and we're full of esoteric exploration at this time. And at the same time, we need to step up our game in administration and physical solvency.
Not everybody has to care about physical solvency. Just somebody at the lodge, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Just one guy.
You got guys that are totally into the ritual.
Yes.
That's their passion. Let them do their passion.
That's exactly
you got other guys doing other things. But somebody at the lodge needs to think about the numbers, I think.
Right. And that's the point. And you started with that, and I meant to bring that up. People, there's a part for you, and feed what they want, feed that what your members want. Help them with their fish fries, help them with their ritual work, help them with their esoteric rabbit holes, and help them with their financial responsibility. Give people the opportunity to shine and trust them. That's the biggest thing. Yep. Trust them to do what they're passionate about, because they're going to do good if they're passionate about
it. Absolutely. Don't deny anyone their passion. Right?
Yes. And it'll make them a lot stronger.
We had a rabbit hole. We had at our stated meeting last night, we had a brother stand up and talk about men's mental health. It's a completely different topic than we've had recently. And I thought it was great. We all needed to hear about all that. And the brother's passionate about it. He wanted to share it. We absolutely let him, and I think a lot of members got a lot out of that. Yes. So, and whatever a brother's passion is, let him do it. He's going to put his heart into
it. What's interesting? Golly, here we go. Sorry, man, no final thoughts tonight. So it's interesting. I was thinking about that today. I was thinking about the Einsteins out there, the Teslas out there, all these people that they were a little bit crazy. They just had a different view on things, and they didn't really get along so well with the rest of the world because they had all these things and nobody really understood what they were saying. But if they had a good lodge that would let them just say what they had to say, they might not seem a little off kilter. They might have been just a little bit better. So we ought to have a tin hat and let everybody have 10 minutes of their tin hat, portion of the night, and just talk about whatever they want to talk about. aliens, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just talk about what you love.
Yeah, we do have to get home by midnight.
Yes, right. So, anyways, yes. You're muted. What did
Yeah,
you
I'm not
say?
hearing.
I said I heard some pretty crazy rants and lodge before. I'm not sure I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
You're right. Maybe 10 minutes is a little long.
You
We'll
might
give
have to
everybody a 3 minute.
Hey,
full
but
one.
you
Yeah.
know what? It doesn't have to be in lodge. That's why you have the
Yes.
the late night discussions on the back deck. That's what that's
Yes.
for. You know, that's
Absolutely.
where you entertain all
That's and it's cool that you said that. Goliad Lodge number 94 just allowed alcohol on the premise, so we can go and have a cold beer on the porch
Yes.
and talk masonry if we want to. We're not going to bring, it's not our culture to bring a bar in our lodge, so it's not going to happen. We're not going to have liquor bottles there. But at the end of the lodge meeting, if somebody's got a a cooler in the back of their truck and we all go and sit outside and have a beer, nothing wrong with that. So that's
that.
step forward. Talking masonry.
We got a good deck on the back of our lodge now.
Yes.
It's middle of July, and sometimes we bring it inside because it's the middle of July.
Yes, and we have that option, right?
We have
It's
that
amazing.
option. That is
It's
allowed.
amazing.
We passed that rules and regulations, I believe, at our February stated meeting.
Nice. February. You just, yeah, you were right behind Hillcrest. That's funny. But anyways, final thoughts. Thank you so much, Zach, for coming on the show. We love you and we appreciate you. And anything we can do to support you here on our show, we will. If you ever want to come back and talk about any topic you're passionate about, just let us know, because we know it's backed up with facts and not just a bunch of speculation like I'd like to do. And you actually have some good points and unlike myself, so hopefully you don't take my place, but come on anytime you want to.
I don't think I would talk nearly as much as you. I'm generally fairly quiet. Post the chart, it speaks for itself. That's one nice thing about Facebook. If I get on there and say, no, that's not true, that's ignored. But if you show a chart,
you get everybody. You don't have to say a word, and everybody's up in.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Hey, I don't know when y'all are going to air this, but a different thing, what I was working on today, the home and school got together, the board did, and we are offering SNAP assistance for widows in the hurricane affected zone.
Yes.
Should be getting an email probably tomorrow to all Master Masons in Texas about that. I'm encouraging all the lodges to check on their widows and get that information to them. This will be $1,500 that we're not asking for receipts for or anything else. It's based solely upon the widow saying that she needs it, and a DDGM or worshipful master or lodge secretary saying that this is a worthy applicant and that she needs it. Okay. We're going to trust it on that.
Wow.
And then anything past $1,500 we'll do through our normal system, where we go and get estimates and we pay the contractor directly. But this money will go directly to the widows. They can spend it on a hotel night. They can spend it on a generator. They can spend it on food. We don't care.
Wow.
I can push this out pretty quick. I can't think of any like major editing that we have to do. Just some quiet spots that need to take out. So I can push it out by the end of the week. That way it's timely.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. We'll try and right now our thoughts are a lot of them still don't have electricity.
Yes.
But we're going to task the DDGMs and lodges with trying to make contact and help them out. That's for quick assistance.
Absolutely.
That'd be good to be able to help.
If a tree fell through their house and they have major repairs, we'll go down that route if we need to. Also, this is more the quick, get it to you quick assistance.
Right.
Love it.
Right.
Great.
That's excellent. Y'all are doing such a great job. Thank you so much for that too. Otherwise, I would like to say, brothers out there, If you need assistance with your lodge, we have a few different templates we can share to help you to do that budgeting that you might need to do if it's for the first time. Hopefully in the future you can go to officer leadership training, because it will help you in formulating these ideas for doing these things that we talked about tonight. But if you're not there yet, just give us a holler. I've got a template right here in front of me, as a matter of fact, that I was looking at earlier, that I'd be happy to share with anyone that reaches out. So otherwise,
real quick on the officer leadership, since everyone's doing a budget right now, or they should be, our lodge pays for 101, 201, 301, senior deacon, junior warden, senior warden to go to those classes.
Nice.
It's a budget. Put it in the budget, send your officers. They need that education. It'll help your lodge. It's worth the investment.
Very important.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
We have the senior deacon and junior warden going each year, so that by time they're junior warden, they've had the 101 and 201, so that they can start planning.
That's what we used to do, but they added 301.
Yeah, 301's cool. 301's cool. And there's still good stuff there. So yeah, that may be something we may want to relook at our rules and regulations as well, and add the same, because our lodge can afford it, and we think and I think that we should.
Well, I mean, I don't want to ask the officers necessarily to spend $250. I think that's for the lodge. The lodge ought to cover it. So our lodge does, but that's my opinion. You know,
right?
Other lodges can do things how they wish, but I recommend budgeting.
And if your lodge can't afford it, then sure, go for it yourself. Do it yourself. That's what I did. You know, I went before Goliad was on a great track. We had a couple of guys that were kind of getting us pointed in the right direction, but then I went, the next brother went, and we decided, after my year, we decided to put it in the budget for two brothers to go, and so we just kept on going. But yeah, absolutely, put it in the budget. There's no reason not to. Now that we've put it in the budget, now we can afford to do all three if we want to. I can tell you. So yeah, you're absolutely right. But otherwise, thank you for coming on the show, Justin. I appreciate you. I appreciate all the hard work you do to keep me out of Masonic jail. And
it's not easy,
you brothers, all you friends and brothers out there that join us every week and make us look smarter than we are. Thank you. We love you, and keep it between the points.